Not sure how I got up here, but let's continue the story before I start thinking about it. The sixth book in the Harry Potter series was published on July 16th, 2005. It takes place in the year 1996. And you'll see why later in the summary, but this book sparked a lot of discussion and hype for the seventh book. Some of you might even remember some early memes that spawned during this time, but we'll get into that later. Now, while I did say in the last review that I wouldn't be starting elsewhere, in the case of this book, Harry has stopped having dreams about Voldemort since Voldemort realized that, yes, while he could manipulate Harry, Harry could also find out about his plans, and he can't have that. However, the story starts with how both sides are responding to certain events that are happening. The beginning starts with Fudge visiting the Muggle Prime Minister and explaining what's going on. This has happened before, but now it's different since Voldemort is back. The Dementors are on his side, and a lot has been happening that's been affecting Muggles as well as wizards. It's here we learn that Fudge was removed from office and replaced by a man named Rufus Scrimgeour, who has been hard at work actively trying to find and catch Death Eaters left and right. Some have already been caught, but many have not. Now, we don't go back to Harry just yet. First, we go to the home of Severus Snape, where Narcissa Malfoy and her sister Bellatrix have arrived to ask Snape a favor. It seems Voldemort has recruited Draco and wants him to do something. I wonder what that could be. It's probably not important. Anyway, Narcissa fears for her son's life, so she and Snape do the unbreakable vow to ensure that Snape will keep Draco safe. Alright, now we come back to summer with the Dursleys. Nothing really has happened much since Harry's been really depressed about Sirius's death. However, Dumbledore is paying a visit. He stops by to let Harry know that he inherited Sirius's house along with Kreacher. Harry doesn't want the house, nor Kreacher, but he can't afford to free Kreacher since Kreacher knows too much about the Order and what their plans are. So he sends Kreacher to go work in the Hogwarts kitchens with the other house elves there. Now, Dumbledore takes Harry to the home of Horace Slughorn, a former teacher at Hogwarts. Dumbledore wanted Harry to help recruit him since he's in need of a new teacher. Slughorn takes a liking to Harry, especially since he taught his mother, Lily, many years ago. She was apparently a very good student, while Slughorn decides to go back to work at Hogwarts. Dumbledore takes Harry to the Burrow, but before leaving him there, he tells Harry that he has some lessons for him that are very important. Dumbledore will send word to Harry when these lessons will be, and they will be focusing on Voldemort. He also says that the contents of these lessons are to remain a secret, but Harry can tell Ron and Hermione about them since it's important to keep your friends close. Well, Harry spends the rest of the summer with the Weasleys. Also, Bill and Fleur are about to get married. Fleur has been spending time with the Weasleys as well in order to get to know them better, although Ginny and Molly don't like Fleur that much. Anyway, it's time to go get some school supplies with Hermione. While getting new robes, Harry, Ron, and Hermione run into Draco Malfoy and his mother. Harry notices that Draco is anxious to get away from his mother and decides to tail him while everyone else visits Fred and George's joke shop. It seems Malfoy is plotting something since he needs something from Borgin and Burke's, something that needs to be fixed, that only he can fix. Anyway, time to go to school. On the train, Harry is invited to sit with Slughorn and a few others for a bit. You see, Slughorn likes to throw little parties for his favorite students, usually students with connections to well-known witches and wizards. And one of the students in this little gathering is Blaise Zabini, a Slytherin, and one of Malfoy's friends. Harry decides to tail Zabini back to his compartment with the invisibility cloak to spy on Malfoy. Malfoy is definitely up to something since he tells his friends about a mission from a certain Dark Lord. But it seems when it's actually time to get off the train, Malfoy stays behind. He actually caught a glimpse of Harry as he was coming in. Malfoy stuns Harry, breaks his nose, and then throws the invisibility cloak back on him. Now, Malfoy has even more of a reason to be mad at Harry, since Harry's the reason his father got sent to Azkaban. Well, Harry's stuck on the train, but he is luckily saved by Tonks, who was doing a sweep of the train to make sure no Death Eaters or dark objects were in the area. Tonks gets Harry back on his feet and fixes his nose. Snape takes Harry back to the castle. Now, I should mention real quick that the Daily Prophet has been running articles on Harry being the chosen one who will defeat Voldemort. We'll get back to that in a minute. Well, it seems Slughorn has come back to take his post as potions teacher. Snape is finally Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. Now, at first, Harry and Ron weren't planning to take potions since they didn't do well enough on their potions owl. But Professor McGonagall said that Slughorn would happily take them into his class since they did well enough for him. Slughorn is happy to take Harry and Ron in as students, but since they don't have a copy of the potions textbook, they have to borrow one. Harry's has been drawn on quite a bit, but some of the notes in the book have been very helpful. So helpful, in fact, that Harry makes a potion so good that Slughorn rewards Harry with the luck potion Felix Felicis. Slughorn has already intended to reward the best potion in the class for that day, so it works out. However, Hermione is jealous. The textbook used to belong to someone called the Half-Blood Prince. Anyways, time for Dumbledore's first lesson. Harry and Dumbledore use the pensieve to look at memories of those who knew of Tom Riddle and his family, the Gaunts. You see, the Gaunts are direct descendants of Salazar Slytherin. The first memory that Harry had seen was of a man from the Ministry there to arrest Morphin Gaunt for attacking a muggle by the name of Tom Riddle. Here we meet Riddle's grandfather, Marvolo, and his mother, Merope. We find out after seeing the memory that it's likely Merope used a love potion on Tom Riddle Sr., who lived in the nearby village, but not everything can last forever, and Merope left her baby at an orphanage where she died. Before we see the next memory, Harry is now Quidditch captain and is running tryouts. Ron managed to do the best, maybe with a little outside help. And now Harry has his whole team together. But we can't all have good news. Harry is still continuing to try to keep tabs on Malfoy, but he can't seem to prove anything. And to make things worse, while at Hogsmeade, Katie gets cursed. The curse came from a necklace that she was delivering in a package. We don't know who gave her the package or who it was for. All we know is that the receiver of the package was intended to be killed. Now, we'll worry about that in a minute. The next memory is of a shopkeeper who had been sold a locket belonging to Salazar Slytherin. Merope sold that locket for the money. Now, moving on, we fast forward a bit to the next memory, which is Dumbledore's, and it's the first time he meets Tom Riddle as a child living in the orphanage. Here we learn Tom Riddle liked to collect trophies of his victims and preferred to do everything alone. Again, we'll come back to that in a minute. A couple things happen before the next set of memories. Ron is nervous about Quidditch, so Harry utilizes the placebo effect to help Ron win the next Quidditch match, which is successful and gets Ron a girlfriend in Lavender Brown. Hermione is not pleased. Speaking of love, Harry's been having problems with all these girls trying to go out with him since he's the chosen one. Hermione even warns Harry that the girls intend to slip him some love potion. Harry's been pretty careful about that and even asks Luna to go to Slughorn's Christmas party with him, as friends. And the Christmas party goes smoothly until Hermione starts running away from her date, who is being really annoying. Then Malfoy is caught lurking around the party. He later leaves and Snape follows behind. Harry overhears him talking about how Snape promised his mom he'd protect him, but Malfoy insists he doesn't need help. Yes, Malfoy is very clearly up to something, but we still don't know what. While spending the holidays at the Burrow, Scrimgeour comes for a visit and talks to Harry about working with the Ministry to raise morale. Basically, he'd be there to make the Ministry look good instead of how they look now, arresting an abundance of innocents claiming they're Death Eaters. Harry naturally wants nothing to do with all this and turns him down. Now, back to school with the next couple of memories, one from Slughorn that had clearly been tampered with. Tom Riddle had simply asked about Horcruxes, and while we know that Slughorn answered truthfully in the real memory, the tampered one doesn't tell us anything. The next memory is from Morphin. Tom Riddle had actually discovered his ancestry while at school, since all he had to go off of was his middle name, Marvolo, the name of his grandfather. So he went to the House of Gaunt, where he found out Marvolo had died years ago. Morphin was the only one there. Morphin nearly killed Riddle, thinking him to be his father, but doesn't after hearing Riddle speak Parseltongue. This is where Riddle learns more about his father, and that he still lives in the village nearby. Riddle kills his father and manipulates Morphin's memories to believe that he was the one who did it, thus allowing Riddle to steal Marvolo's ring and send Morphin to Azkaban. Dumbledore assigns Harry to get the unedited memory from Slughorn, but Harry finds that really difficult to do. Slughorn starts to avoid Harry, even though Harry is still continuing to do well in potions. After learning how to apparate, Harry finds a lovesick Ron and discovers that Ron ate candy meant for Harry that was laced with love potion. Harry takes Ron to Slughorn, and Slughorn gives Ron an antidote. Slughorn decides to give everyone a pick-me-up through a drink of oak-matured mead. But after Ron takes a drink, it's poisoned. Harry acts fast and manages to save Ron with a bezoar, which we learned from the Half-Blood Prince's notes. Well, since Ron is out of commission, McLaggen replaces him as keeper during the next Quidditch match, but because McLaggen believes he's literally the best thing ever and acts as captain, Harry accidentally gets injured during the game. This is where Harry finally realizes that he can use Creature to tail Malfoy. Dobby helps as well, though. We'll get back to them, too. There are two more memories that Dumbledore needs to show him. One from a house elf named Hoki, who worked for a woman named Hepzibah. You see, after Riddle finished school, he worked at Borgin and Burke's. Riddle finds Hepzibah, where she shows him his mother's locket and a cup that belonged to Helga Hufflepuff. It seems not long after the treasures disappeared, and Hoki believes she poisoned her mistress. Now, the next memory is Dumbledore's, and it's when Voldemort himself comes by to ask for the defense against the dark arts position. Dumbledore was headmaster by that point and turned him away. So that explains why Hogwarts hasn't been able to keep a defense against a dark arts teacher for more than a year. Harry later discovers through Dobby's findings that Malfoy has been stopping by the Room of Requirement regularly. He is doing something there, but for some reason, it doesn't seem to be going well. Also, Aragog has died of old age, and Hagrid wants Harry and friends there for the burial. And none of them want to go, since Harry and Ron nearly got eaten by the spiders. Well, that day, Harry decides to take a little bit of Felix Felicis to see if he can get the unedited memory from Slughorn, since that's really important. And he is successful. He manages to run into Slughorn while on his way to Hagrid, since he was inspired to go there. Slughorn, wanting the venom from Aragog's corpse since it's valuable, decides to go with Harry to pay respects. After getting Slughorn and Hagrid really drunk, Harry is able to persuade Slughorn to give him the memory. Now, the untainted memory reveals that Horcruxes are basically objects containing a piece of a soul. It's a method to obtain immortality, because if your body dies, that piece of soul will still remain behind and will find a way to be reborn. Now, because Voldemort wants to ensure he lives forever, he has 6 Horcruxes. One of the Horcruxes was actually Riddle's diary from years ago. The next one was Marvolo's ring, which Dumbledore had recently destroyed, which is why his hand is very blackened and diseased looking. Dumbledore is on the hunt for Voldemort's Horcruxes. Harry wants to help Dumbledore find the next Horcrux and help him destroy it, and we'll come back to that later. Harry had been tailing Malfoy through use of the Marauder's map and ended up finding him in the boys' bathroom, crying about something not working and Myrtle trying to comfort him. Malfoy sees Harry, though, and the two start fighting. Harry ends up using a spell that the Half-Blood Prince wrote down, and it nearly killed Malfoy. To be fair, Harry had no idea what it did, and the other spells he learned from the prince weren't that bad. But Harry didn't get away with this, and Myrtle summons Snape. Snape heals Malfoy, but Harry is in massive trouble now. Snape does try to figure out where Harry learned the spell, but Harry refuses to tell. He actually hides his potions book in the room of requirement before stopping by Snape's office with the rest of his books. And well, since Harry did cast a horrible spell, Snape gives Harry detention every Saturday for the rest of the term. Now this means Harry can't make the next Quidditch match, but luckily the team was able to win without him. And this is where Harry finally acts on his budding crush on Ginny and gives her a kiss. The two are going out for a while, but it's hard since Ginny has her owl exams. Anyway, we'll come back to that in a minute. Harry gets another message from Dumbledore and is on his way to his office when he runs into Professor Trelawney. She was trying to hide something in the room of requirement, but someone was already in there, and that someone was happy. That someone also threw her out of the room. Harry figures it would be a good idea to have her come with him to tell Dumbledore, but this is where Professor Trelawney reveals that Snape was the one who overheard her telling half of the prophecy to Dumbledore, and was also the one who ran to tell Voldemort. Now, after Harry runs to Dumbledore's office without Professor Trelawney, he yells at Dumbledore for his judge of character, and Dumbledore explains that night, Snape had discovered Voldemort's plan to kill Harry's parents and immediately regretted his decision. Now, we can worry about that later. It's time to go look for the Horcrux, which was discovered to be in a cave where the young Riddle took his victims to torment them while the orphanage was enjoying the sea air. After getting through some of the traps and enchantments in the cave, they make it to a small island with a basin full of potion. Dumbledore drinks all the potion, needing to be forced by Harry sometimes, and inside the basin was a locket. Now, Harry didn't pick it up since in that moment he was focusing on getting Dumbledore water, but the Inferi inside the lake nearly took him into the water. Thanks to Dumbledore, he was saved. Dumbledore grabbed the locket, and the two went back to Hogsmeade, where they apparated from. Dumbledore is feeling very weak, but there's not much they can do right now since the Dark Mark has appeared over the school. Both Harry and Dumbledore fly on brooms over there to see who died, but it seems no one has died. Yet. Here it's revealed that Voldemort's plan for Draco was to have him kill Dumbledore. Malfoy does disarm Dumbledore right when Harry is stunned under the invisibility cloak on his way down from the astronomy tower. Malfoy reveals that he let Death Eaters into the school through the Vanishing Cabinet in the Room of Requirement, and put Rosmerta under the Imperious Curse to keep an eye on things. He was the one who tried to kill Dumbledore with the necklace and poison him with the mead. Harry can only watch in horror as more Death Eaters reach the top of the tower, and encourage Malfoy to do the job, though he can't do it. Then Snape comes in and does what Malfoy could not. He kills Albus Dumbledore. Harry, now free of Dumbledore's spell and recovered from the shock, immediately pursues Snape, who was already on his way off the school grounds. The Death Eaters run rampant, continuing to fight the members of the Order, and poor Bill is bitten by Greyback, who had not transformed yet. Harry does his best to take down Snape, but it's no use. The other Death Eaters intend to kill Harry, but here we learn that Voldemort wants to kill Harry himself. Here we also learn that Snape was the Half-Blood Prince. He leaves with Malfoy and the other Death Eaters in tow. Harry takes the locket, which had fallen out of Dumbledore's pocket when he fell, and realizes that it's fake. Someone called R.A.B. has the real one. Well, shoot! All that was for nothing! After everyone explains their side of what happened, Fleur declares that she will still continue to marry Bill despite him potentially being a werewolf. This is where Tonks also reiterates her feelings for Remus, who had been turning her down gently throughout the story. Now, after Dumbledore's funeral, there is worry that the school won't open. Also, Harry decides to break it off with Ginny, fearing that Voldemort will target her if he finds out about their feelings for one another. Harry also decides not to go to school the following year since he intends to finish Dumbledore's work. He's going to seek out the rest of the Horcruxes and kill Voldemort. Ron and Hermione promise to come with him. And that's where the story ends. It wouldn't be until 2 years later when the final book in the series was released. Imagine the wait! I actually do have a couple stories regarding the next book, but we'll go over that later. Let's analyze. Alright, we have just learned that it is very possible for a wizard to split their soul by killing someone, and they can put that part of soul inside an object. Now, in the case of Voldemort, it's not just any old object. It's something that holds significance. That's why he chose the locket, the ring, and the diary. We'll get into the other ones later. Now, we've already gone over Felix Felicis and its properties. It seems kind of broken, doesn't it? Well, the fact that it takes so long to make emphasizes that you shouldn't rely on luck to get you through it all. Harry especially didn't take it when he went with Dumbledore to the cave. Besides, the whole adventure would have ended in 5 minutes if Felix Felicis was always there to save the day. And then we wouldn't have a story. Harry went through quite the adventure in that cave, didn't he? In that cave, he saw a lake full of Inferi. Naturally, seeing an abundance of undead frightened him, but Dumbledore told him that it's the unknown that we fear upon seeing death and darkness. This can be tied back to the Dementors and how they appear. Fear of the unknown is powerful and was likely foreshadowing to that cliffhanger at the end. I'll get into this more in the next book analysis, but Harry needed his friends to be nearby. Dumbledore was right when he said it was important for him to keep his friends close. Harry wouldn't be able to handle the burden of this knowledge alone. He needed someone to give him advice, and Ron and Hermione usually have really good advice. Now, none of them are perfect by any means, but they do work great together. Now, I want to talk about Merope and Lily for a minute. I want to compare the two mothers. Merope chose to stop using magic and die despite needing to live for her son. Lily, however, had great courage and insisted on saving her own son who needed to live to save the world. I'll go into this more in the series analysis, but there are quite a few parallels between Harry and Voldemort. If you have read the whole series, or just this book specifically, you know that Harry was right about Draco the whole time, despite everyone disagreeing with him. Now, it's true that if Harry caught Draco in the act of everything, the whole story could have ended in 5 minutes. Draco did not make it easy for anyone to discover what was going on. The Room of Requirement wasn't even on the Marauders' map, which made it hard for Harry to track him. It's both frustrating and satisfying to find out he was right and how the plan came together. Now, I mentioned this briefly, but similarly to the corruption we saw in the last book, Scrimgeour wanted to make himself look good by making sure Harry was working with the Ministry. Harry would basically be a mascot for hope. Scrimgeour also wanted to know what Dumbledore was up to so that he could help, although we all know he likely wouldn't be much help at all. Speaking of Dumbledore, the reason why I believe he didn't tell anyone else about the Horcruxes was because if that knowledge became widespread, Voldemort would work harder to hide the Horcruxes, and that would throw off the whole plan. Harry had to know for a couple of reasons. The big one being that Harry had to continue the mission if Dumbledore couldn't. The other reason? We'll get to that in the next book. Now, I know I skimmed over Ron's brief relationship with Lavender, but there was so much to cover. I will sum up, though, that Ron and Lavender did end up breaking up after she kept seeing Ron with Hermione. The relationship was clearly unhealthy, though, since Lavender was basically all over Ron, and while Ron liked the experience at first, he couldn't stand Lavender's constant presence. I'll compare that a bit to the brief time Harry and Ginny were together. Ginny was more respectful of Harry's needs, and he was more respectful of her needs. While he did want to spend more time with her, he understood that she had exams to do, and she understood that he had tasks to do that she couldn't know about. Even when Harry breaks up with her, Ginny at first insists she doesn't care that she's in danger, but Harry cares. He cares a lot and doesn't want to put her in danger. I just found it fascinating that these two were able to communicate their feelings to each other so clearly, whereas Ron and Lavender hardly spoke to each other at all. Overall, I did enjoy reading this again. It builds up perfectly to the next book, and I would encourage you to read the next book as soon as you finish this one so that you can know what happens next. I actually have a funny story about this book when it came out when I was 7 years old. This was another book that I remember seeing advertised everywhere in my library. Now, I saved this story for here because of the major spoiler of Dumbledore's death. When I was 7, I was at my grandma's house, just zoning out, listening around for anything, and I overheard my mom, my cousin, and my grandma discussing the ending of Book 6 since they had all just finished it and really wanted to know what happened next. So I knew Dumbledore was going to die before even reading the series itself, which was probably why the impact of the death didn't hit me as hard as Sirius's did in the last book. I'd recommend this book for ages 12 and up. While it is shorter and a bit less dense than the previous one, there's still a lot to go over, and this is where the books start to get a little more violent. Things are definitely going to pick up in speed in the next book, so buckle up. Now, the movie definitely took a lot more liberties as well. Naturally, a lot of stuff was cut. We didn't get to see the House of Gaunt. We didn't even get to see Voldemort obtaining the objects that would become his Horcruxes. And quite a few things were either not explained or explained very briefly. Again, I understand that some things work better on the page than on screen, but this movie in particular really feels like the entire team assumed literally everyone had read the book beforehand. And for the time, they might have been right, but nowadays, when not everyone has read the book, some parts might become very confusing. We're nearly at the end of the series, and I won't make you wait 2 years for this review. Tune in on Wednesday for the final book in the series and the epic battle that awaits. Happy reading! Soon, but not soon enough.